Hi, folks. Hello, everybody. We are going to be getting started very shortly. So, if you are attending the event, if you could make your way to your chairs at this time, don't be afraid of the first four chairs. Come forward, please. We want to see you. And just so everyone knows, cash sales close at 7 p.m. So, if you want to buy anything with cash, you got to do it before 7 p.m. And we'll be getting started very shortly. Hello, hello, everybody. Hi. Welcome, welcome. Thank you all so much for being here tonight. My name is Lainey Rose. I'm the events manager here at City Bookshop. It is wonderful to be with you all today, both in person and virtually if you are streaming in that way. Um, we always have something on the calendar here, and we have some very exciting things coming up in June. From Catherine Arden and her latest epic fantasy to Tia Williams and her latest romance, and a new book in the series of 111 places for kids you must not miss in Washington, D.C. All the information about our upcoming events and our 14 different book clubs can be found on our website. Before we get to tonight's event, some housekeeping details. Number one, if you could take a moment to silence your cell phones, we would appreciate it. Thank you kindly. Number two, if you need a restroom, it's upstairs past the cash registers and the greeting cards. And number three, we will have time for questions tonight for both in-person and virtual attendees. So even if you're watching via Zoom, you can participate. Please put those questions in the Q&A feature so that we will see them and can ask on your behalf. And finally, most importantly, if you still need to purchase a copy of tonight's book, we have those copies available and we'd be happy to help you out with that. All those copies are upstairs at the register, not on the shelves, and can be purchased prior to the signing line. I am so excited that we get to share the delight over Liz Lawson's newest book with all of you today. And I see we have a lot of good friends and family in the house, so I'm very excited that we have a very warm, loving group tonight. It Happened One Murder is a rom-com twist, a laugh-out-loud mystery romance following one woman who will have to pair up with an unlikely ally to solve a murder in their quaint New Jersey beach town. They say murder has a way of bringing people together. Our author of the evening is Liz Lawson, the New York Times bestselling co-author of the YA mystery The Agathas and other novels for young readers. She lives in the DC metro area with her family. This is her adult debut. Joining us in conversation tonight is friend of the shop, Laura Hankin, the author of One Star Romance and many other staff favorites. Her original screenplay, Don't Say Good Luck, starring Sunny Chandler and Melanie Linsky, will premiere on Netflix in 2026. She lives in Washington, D.C., where she once fell off a treadmill twice in one day. Please join me in welcoming our authors of the evening. Give them a big round of applause. Keep that applause up.
Hello. Is this on? Great.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming.
Oh my gosh, I'm so happy to be here. Uh,
Is mine on? Yes.
yeah,
Okay.
we're all good on sound. Okay. I'm so happy to be here talking about this delightful book with you and happy actual pub day.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited.
Yeah. I thought that we should start out with a game, of course.
Of course.
And because this book is such a wonderful blend of a rom-com and a murder mystery, I thought we should do Kiss or Kill, which yes. Which is basically would you rather or F Marry Kill, but without the marriage. Sorry to marriage. So I'm going to ask you about two things, and you have to choose which one of them you would kiss and which one of them you would kill. And then I think we're going to poll the audience too. So, be paying attention. Okay. Um, so to start, Liz, kiss or kill? Having to share a hotel bed with someone you're inconveniently attracted to, or having to solve a murder with them.
Ooh, that is a hard one. I would, my husband's in the back, like, what are you going to answer? Um, I, well, now I have to say, I would definitely kill sharing a hotel bed with someone. I would never, ever want to do that. And I would kiss solving a murder.
Ooh, nice. See, I love to read about murders and murder mysteries and stuff, but I would never ever want to solve one.
That's fair.
So,
Probably me either. I would be too scared. I'd be like, call the police. What are we doing?
yeah. All right, audience, raise your hand if you would kiss sharing the bed. Yeah. Well, I was about to be like, wow, we have a bunch of murder aficionados here.
I mean, everyone.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm scared of all of you.
Yeah. Yeah, you're in.
Yes, you're attracted to them.
Thank you, Keith. You are attracted, but you hate them, like in this book.
Hmm. But like in a good way, in like a yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Sometimes hatred is hot. Okay, well, I guess the rest of you would kiss solving the murder.
A lot of murders.
Yeah. Two of the very fun tropes in this book. Would you kiss or kill second chance romance versus enemies to lovers?
Ooh, I would kiss second chance romance and kill enemies to lovers. Like, does enemies to lovers really work in real life? I'm so sorry to disappoint some of you.
No, I know. My answers are so different if it's like fictional versus real life.
Exactly.
Fictional, I would kiss enemies to lovers, but real life, second chance, which is literally what my husband and I had. So I have to kiss that one. All right, audience, raise your hand if you would kiss second chance romance.
More divided this time.
Yeah, and raise your hand if you would kiss enemies to lovers. I feel like it's just a slightly smaller group, but a very passionate.
Yes,
Like the
very
hand went up
vigorous.
so fast.
They're like, absolutely. We love people that we hate.
All right. Two locations that play a pretty big role in this book. Would you kiss or kill Jersey Shore or New York City?
My husband is from the New Jersey Shore. So this time, I'm sorry, Reed, but I'm going to have to kill the Jersey Shore and kiss New York City. I apologize to your whole family.
Yes. Would anybody like to contradict this by kissing the Jersey Shore? Oh. Okay, we have three hands. And then a lot of this book takes place when the characters are in their 20s, but they also did start to get together a little bit back in high school or like towards the end of high school. So, kiss or kill reliving high school or reliving your 20s?
Oh, that's a tough one because I'd rather not do either. But I guess I'd kiss reliving my 20s, maybe in a slightly different way than I did it the first time, and then kill being in high school again.
Yeah. I think I agree. Well, it's also like, would you have the knowledge of your life now or would you not? Because
Yeah.
I feel like I could relive my 20s knowing about my life now. Because the thing I hated the most about my 20s was the sense of like, is it going to work out? What am I going to do?
Agreed. Yes.
But that also feels like cheating.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, audience. Last chance to really make your opinions known here until our audience Q&A. Raise your hand if you would kiss reliving high school.
Wow, you guys are very brave.
And raise your hand if you would kiss reliving your 20s.
You guys are much more sane than the in my opinion.
All right. Now that we have played that, Liz, can you tell us a little bit about this book and what inspired you to write it?
Sure. So It Happened One Murder is a second chance romance, enemies to lovers, rom-com murder mystery that takes place on the Jersey Shore. And it is dual POV. Harriet has just lost her job up in New York City. It was her dream job working in journalism. And she's forced to move back in with her mother, who she does not have, I think this is putting it lightly, not have a good relationship with. And she runs straight into the guy that she ghosted 8 years ago, who she had a short fling with after high school. And shortly after that, her stepfather's murdered. So they have to, and his sister is accused of the murder. So they have to solve the crime together. I would say I was inspired to write it. It all started from actually sort of something you kind of mentioned, the idea of like being 25 and feeling like you just have no idea what you're doing with your life. And I was thinking like, you know I felt that way when I was 25, just like completely like at loose ends. And what would happen if you thought you had your dream life, but you just had like the carpet pulled right out from under you? And then, of course, you have to solve a murder.
As if just regular being in your 20s wasn't enough. Yeah. Well, it is such a fun blend of murder mystery and romance. And so I was curious about like what made you want to combine the two genres, and did you have more fun writing one or the other, or like did one come more easily to you?
I mean, so my last three books were all murder mysteries. So when I set out to write it, I I knew I wanted, I don't know, before I even started writing it, I knew I wanted to combine the two. I just thought blending genres sounded like such a fun idea. And I think that the mystery part was a little bit easier just because I've done it before. I mean, those books had like a little bit of romance here and there in them, but it wasn't as big of a part of the books as this one is. So writing the romance and like figuring out the romance beats versus the mystery beats was like, it was interesting. I had like a whole spreadsheet where I was kind of like tracking them and trying to figure out like what landed where and how they could fit together. And also the first, before I sold it, it was more of a mystery than a romance, like definitely leaned more that direction. But my publisher really wanted to push the romance also. So I added like the epilogue and leaned more heavily into the romance part of it after selling it.
Mm-hmm. That's so funny. Yeah, I mean, romance is popular. We love it.
Very popular.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I was so curious about your process for writing a fictional murder, given that you've done it so well so many times now.
Murdered people.
Yeah,
Yes, thank
exactly.
you.
Like, are you okay? Um, and also, when you're plotting it out, is it like, do you have the serial killer corkboard kind of thing going on? Are you like, do you know from the beginning this is who did it, or are you playing with different suspects as you go?
I it, so for this book, I did not have a cork board, but actually my last YA, I definitely turned in my first draft, got my notes back, and then I have a cork board and I plotted it out to figure out where I had gone wrong. Basically, I like plotted it out, had to like rearrange note cards. The whole like murder board thing happened. And I always know who did it. Like that is the one thing I know when I start writing is who did it. Cause I feel like it would be so difficult to write a murder mystery without knowing. Although I don't know if you've ever read Tana French, who I love.
She's the absolute best
Yeah,
in the
she's
entire
amazing.
world.
If you have not read Tana French, she's an incredible literary thriller author. And I read an interview with her that said she does not know who did it before she starts.
What?
Yes. So there's apparently one book where halfway through she's like, "Oh, actually, I don't think that person did. I think someone else did," and she just had to change. She just went. Yeah.
This I'm shaking. I'm sorry. I think I have to leave. I can't. This has blown my
Yeah,
mind.
when I read that, I was like, "Are you how?"
Her
Like
books are so intricate and
her
like
books are incredible, and so you would think so well plotted, and like maybe after the fact, like second draft, I don't know, but
maybe.
it's yeah, my mind was blown when I read that.
Oh, okay. So basically, like to take the next step in your career, you have to write a book where you don't know who the killer is and figure it out in the second draft. Oh my gosh. Um, well, I mean, okay, continuing on the murder train, and then we'll like switch over to romance, don't worry. But how do you keep the stakes of the murder high when you're writing a book like this while also making the book still feel so like fun and funny and cozy and not making the audience be like, "Oh, death." You know? Does that make any sense?
Yes, it
Okay.
does. I think the biggest thing, the thing with like a cozy mystery is it has so much to do with the characters, right? Like a thriller is so much more about the plot than the character development. And so leaning into the characters, like having them come alive on the page, I think really helps uh maybe the audience or the reader feel like they're on a journey with them rather than thinking like, oh my gosh, there's just a lot of killing and blood. You know,
Hmm.
and also having the murder kind of happen off the page.
Yeah,
That's a big part of it too.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
And also probably having the murder victim maybe deserve it a little bit.
Yes, that is also helpful. And in It Happened One Murder, the murder victim absolutely deserved it, in my opinion.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Well, so this is your adult debut. And I would love to hear about what made you want to switch over from writing YA for this one, and then just like talk a lot about the differences.
I I was actually talking about this today on a podcast that I did, and I think one of the biggest things was I had a kid, and I mean he's 9, and all my books have come out after he was born, so that wasn't really exactly what caused me to want to move. But as he got older, I started feeling, this sounds so ridiculous, but more like a grown up than I ever had before. That teen voice was still really strong in my head. And now I feel like I'm 25, which I am.
All that stuff about reliving your
It's been
20s.
really hard, and I'm not sure why. No, but I think there was a part of me that just started feeling like more grown up, I guess, as silly as that sounds. And like the adult part of me was louder in my head than it ever had been. And I just wanted to try something new. Like I wanted to see the difference, I guess. Like I had also started reading a lot more adult than YA at that point. And so I was like, if I'm reading all of this, like why, they always say read what you want to write, what you want to read. So I was like, oh, I should be writing what I would want to read,
Mhm.
which also prompted it too.
Yeah. And how much did you have to think or consciously adjust your voice when you were writing it? Like,
Well,
did you start writing it and you were like, they sound like teenagers?
well, the first draft, my agent was like, they sound like teenagers.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
I was like, oh no. So I definitely had to, it was an adjustment.
Yeah.
I had to work through like work it as I went, as I revised and like had different drafts happen. I had to build that adult voice in myself and in the book, I think. And
Mm.
now I'm writing the second book in my contract, which is also obviously adult, and it's coming much more easily. So I think it was just kind of like that learning curve of what an adult audience would expect versus a teen audience. And also remembering that all those like parameters and rules that exist in YA for whatever reason, because of librarians, because of our current environment with book banning and all of
Mhm.
that, like that really like have made authors very conscious about what they're putting in their books. Reminding myself that as when I'm writing for adults, I don't have to think about any of that. If I want to like put in a ton of cursing, I can, even though my mom doesn't like it. But
Yeah, I was gonna ask, like, were there rules that you were just delighted to break?
yeah,
But mostly the cursing.
no, I mean it was just everything. The freedom of them being able to do whatever they wanted. I didn't have to like have my editor come back and say, well, on, May 25th, that actually is Memorial Day and they wouldn't be in school. And then I would have to rework the
Right.
entire book around that timeline.
Oh my
So,
gosh.
yeah. So that was also very freeing too, not to have to think about school.
Yeah, or like them letting their parents know where they
Yeah, well,
are.
that's why there's so many dead parents in YA, right?
True. It's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Forget about the emotional impact. It's just about like logistics for the author.
It honestly, yes.
Yeah. Well, so now that, it's coming out, have you found that there's a big difference in publishing for adults versus publishing YA, like the marketing and all of
Yeah, I
that?
mean, we were just kind of
Yeah.
talking about this back there. I hadn't fully, it, I guess it hadn't really hit me, or I hadn't really fully realized how much bigger the adult market is than YA. Like all all of the, well, back there's YA, but like, there's just so many more books published in the adult category that you think about these books in genre rather than like category, right? So you don't think of like these are all adult books. You think like I'm reading a romance, or I'm reading literary fiction, or I'm reading sci-fi. Whereas with YA, you mostly think like I'm reading a YA that is romance, because it is such a smaller category. So there is that feeling like all of a sudden, like these huge, you're in the same category as like a Stephen King or Emily Henry, like these giant authors. Whereas with YA, it's a little bit less like that. You still do have like the bigger authors, but it's just on like a different level, I guess. So it
Yeah.
is that feeling of like moving to a much bigger pond.
Yeah. That definitely seems daunting, but also like you're doing a great job.
Oh, well, thank
So,
you.
yeah,
Thank
you're welcome. Um, so both murder mysteries and romances often involve playing with a lot of tropes. And I wanted to ask you about, what made you decide which tropes you wanted to play with in this book, and how did you decide like I want to complicate this trope from what it normally is versus I just want to lean all the way into the trope in a very fun way.
Well, I mean, for example, there is a scene where there's only one bed. And I, actually, when I sold the book, that scene, there was not just one bed. And I was like, why is there more than one bed in this scene? Like, there should only be one. So I rewrote
Yes.
it so I could lean into that a lot, as kind of like a wink to the reader. And it was really fun because I got to like think about that sort of thing of like second chance romance and, enemies to lovers, and how can you turn enemies into lovers in a believable way. And so like all of that stuff was really fun to play with.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you did a great job.
Oh, thank you.
I love a good there's only one bed book. But I feel like you also did a nice job of kind of complicating it too, even as you were leaning into it. Not to give anything away. um, and so, this book, as you mentioned, is dual POV, so it's alternating between the two main characters and their first person viewpoints. Did you find that hard to be switching back and forth? And how did you think about like, okay, what is this person's voice versus this person's voice?
This is so I've actually, well, I'm working on a book right now that is single POV, but I've actually never published a book that was less than two POVs. Weirdly, my last book had three. The Agatha's obviously had two, but I only wrote one of them. And I think that just it comes naturally to me for whatever reason, especially when the characters are so different. And Harriet and Nick in my book are very different. Harriet is like really opinionated and bossy and like kind of unlikable in certain ways, and Nick is like a very loyal, family oriented guy who like uh who is just like there to support the people that he loves as much as he can. So distinguishing between their voices was like fairly easy because they seemed like so real in my head, I think. And that's the biggest thing is like the book I'm working on right now, after my first draft, my editor was like, I feel like we need to understand these characters more so we get their voices a little bit more. And so I did the whole character bio thing and like really got in and dug into like who they are. And once I did that, the voices just kind of came naturally.
Yeah. I love making a character bio.
Oh, there's I know, right?
You do like quite, a bunch of questions, or is it sort of just more like, I'm writing out the life story of my character?
I've done it both ways. I tend to like the life story thing a little bit more because it
Mm,
feels more organic to me. When
yeah.
I have like a list of questions, sometimes I'm like, I don't know the answer to that.
Their favorite color?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like why do I care? Um,
And that makes a big difference.
yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
Sometimes I guess it sometimes does. It
Yeah.
depends on the book, but like, yeah, I just tend to like kind of write it and see where it takes me and like for example, my one of my YAs, the Agatha's, like one of the my character in the book had a horse, and that came out of the character bio. I just randomly was like,
Mm,
she took horseback riding camp, and then we were like, what could we do with a horse? And then it ended up there was a horse chase. So like,
I love it when that
why
happens.
wouldn't there be?
Yeah. Once a horse enters the picture, there needs to be a horse chase.
Yes,
Probably.
kind of like a gun, right?
Yes.
Like, like Chekhov's horse.
A classic rule of literary fiction. Well, you also just now when you were talking about Harriet, you mentioned that she's a little bit unlikable.
Mm.
Um, how do you think about writing a female character who's quote unquote unlikable? Because I feel like it can get so fraught with an audience's expectations of
Oh yeah.
what a female character should be. And I feel like I'm always writing female characters that are flawed, but that I really like. And then people are like, they're so unlikable.
Always. And I'm like, okay, well, that character's kind of like me. So I guess we're
Yeah.
not going to be hanging out. But I mean, I think like there's something to be said for like a very likable character, and like Emily Henry really has like the market on that, right? Her characters are so likable and you just want to like be friends with them and spend as much time as you can in their world, which is lovely. And then, like I said, there's something to be said for it. But I like somebody with a little bit of edge sometimes, and like who is really having that like character arc of like starting the beginning of the book, feel like that edginess kind of like get sanded down as you go. I don't know. I know that is. I actually just wrote like I hardly ever use my Substack, but today I did write something about an unlikable female characters. I
Really?
did because I was thinking about Harriet and thinking like, I know that there are people who have read the book who are like, I don't like Harriet. She's like a rough one.
Mm.
And I'm like, well, like what is your expectation of a female then? Like where's this coming from? And like, should we chat
Mm-hmm.
over a drink? Because like I have many opinions on the subject.
And I feel like Nick, has his moments too where he's frustrating or like argumentative and yeah.
I mean, he's still like holding a grudge from 8 years ago. It's like, bro, like let it go.
Yeah. Well, okay, so everybody needs to go subscribe to your Substack so they can get that essay now.
I write about one thing every 6 months on it. So
I know. I have an author newsletter and I'm like, oh, I don't think I've sent anything out in a year and a half.
they're so hard to keep. I don't know. I know that anyway, that's a whole different conversation, but yeah.
Well, I, have a couple more questions that I can ask you, but perhaps audience members should start thinking of their own questions
Oh, yeah.
too.
Please.
I don't know how we're doing on time. We're good? Okay. Well, with the writing the dual POV, did you find one character came to you more naturally than the other? Or was easier or more fun to write?
I think Harriet came to me a little bit more naturally. I started with her. Like I had started this book a few times over the past few years where I was writing YA and I would just like kind of dabble with it. In early drafts, it always had like her stepfather dying at the beginning of the book, and he was always kind of a jerk. But in one draft, it started in a restaurant in DC, and he like dies there, and then Nick is the chef in the restaurant, and so and then it was in the Outer Banks, but then I was like, there's a show, the Outer Banks. I don't want anyone to think there's like people trying to find gold in this book. So it changed quite a bit, but Harriet was always first. And I feel like her voice was just not more natural to me, but like I said, she's like a little bit more sarcastic and like has a little bit more of I don't careness in her than Nick. And writing her was really fun because of that in certain ways.
Yeah.
But she also has like really good friends and like she cares about them. She just happened to have like not the best parenting growing up.
Yes, to put it lightly.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Well, do you have any, besides Ton of French, do you have any like authors or books that you were really looking to when you were working on this as inspiration in either the romance or the murder mystery?
I I mean, I don't, that's a good question. I would say in terms of murder mystery, I grew up reading cozy mysteries. I always loved like um gosh, these are such like dated references, but like Lillian Braun, oh God, the Cat Who series, if anyone's familiar. Maybe not. I'm like, I was reading books that like 6-year-olds would read when I was 15. And like all of the different Diane Mott Davidson, she wrote like a whole series about a baker who would solve crimes.
Ooh.
Yes, like very cozy mysteries. And so I was thinking about all of those and how like recently there have been more cozy mysteries that are a little bit more, I don't want to say mainstream, but like a little bit less like supermarket ebooks, I guess is a good way to say it.
Yeah.
And they're kind of moving more into like the mainstream of mystery. And so how I wanted to like kind of follow in that footstep.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I don't know, the Thursday, would you classify the Thursday Murder Club as a cozy mystery?
Sure. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like they're very popular
Oh yeah,
now. Yeah.
extremely. I love that book.
I do too. It's so good.
So good.
Um, well, does the audience have any questions? If not, I can keep asking questions. Yes. Okay,
That it takes place in.
I'm going to repeat the questions for the online audience into the microphone. But what part of the Jersey Shore does this book take place in?
It is technically a fictional island called Logan Island, but I very much based it on the location, at least, of Brigantine, which is just north of Atlantic City, which, it's like a tiny island there. But the location is like, I mean, it's that location. I just didn't want to take that island and like kill people on it and all of that. Sometimes it's easier when you're writing to like just make up your own location.
Yeah. Do you think they would have like banned you from the island if you'd done that?
No, I'm sure they would have been fine. But like this way I got to like, create my own little town, which was fun.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no kidding. Okay. Very nice. Yes, that's awesome.
Why the Jersey Shore then?
So, like I said, I did at one point have it set in the Outer Banks, which I've actually never been to the Outer Banks, so I have no idea why I decided to just set it there.
Well,
So
because then you get to do a research trip
that
there
is true.
and write it off.
Good point. I know my next book takes place in Tuscany in Italy. So I'm like, I mean, I must do a book launch in Italy. No, just kidding. But I think when I realized that I didn't really know, I was like using Google Maps to look at the Outer Banks and I didn't really know the vibe of it. I mean, I grew up right outside of Philly. So we would go to Ocean City and Stone Harbor and all of those. And then my husband is from the center of New Jersey, central New Jersey. This is our debate. He says he's from South Jersey, but like the Point Pleasant area. And so anyway, I am very familiar with the Jersey Shore, and I decided like if I'm gonna put it on the shore somewhere, that would be a good place because I'm so familiar.
Um, what kind of research did you have to do for this?
Let's see. I researched, I mean, stuff about like legal research, which is always so much fun.
Ooh.
That I've done for the past couple books where I've been like texting friends who are lawyers or like trying to look up online like different parts of the legal system and what would be happening. It'd be so much easier to write these books if I had a law degree. But I was looking up that sort of thing. I did a little bit of research into the mafia because there's like a bit of that in the book. I looked up like the Jersey political system. Oh, there's a little, this is kind of boring, but there's a little bit of like Jersey Shore real estate happening in here. So I had to look up like Jersey Shore or New Jersey laws for like real estate and things like that too. So really exciting stuff.
Okay, so maybe it's not like a typical murder book where you have to do half your research on like a private browser because you don't want people to see
That
your
was my
search
last
history.
yeah, my last book I was looking up like how long does a body take to decompose in clay soil, things like that.
You can't get it wrong because you know that somebody will email you being like, actually.
Mystery readers are very they're very close readers, so no, you cannot get it
Yeah.
wrong.
Yeah. Any other questions? Yes.
I
So you don't outline? What the heck? You just sit down and write?
well, I always know who did it, so there's that. I am really bad at outlining. I find it, oh God. I just did this panel with R.L. Stein, if you all are
What?
familiar, up in New York. Yeah, it was crazy. I was like, first of all, you're like very famous. Why am I on a panel with you? So it was at Thriller Fest. My YA book was nominated for an award. It was very exciting. But R.L. Stein was like about to like hit me with a book. He was like, "You don't outline? What is wrong with you?" And I was like, I now I feel like I should because you've written like 300 books and you clearly know what you're doing. So perhaps there's something to it. But I just outlining really is boring, but would be really helpful in the long run. I tend to write a first draft and then have to, like I just did for this next book that I'm writing, go back and kind of like rework the whole plot after the first draft because I'm like, oh, I put that in the wrong place and like my pacing is off. And I'm like, it's like I can't see the what's supposed to happen where until I know the vague bones of the story.
Yeah.
Megan.
Okay. Clearly Tana French doesn't outline.
Yeah, she's very famous.
No, it's funny. I sometimes think of like my really bad first drafts as glorified outlines, you know?
Absolutely. Yes. I would say that is me working it out. And so I was once told a story. So Nora Roberts has not the same agent or even anything to do with me other than we happen to have the same agency. And the in-house editor at Writer's House told me the story where it's because she works directly with Nora's agent. And apparently they were like, her agent was like, Nora, we need the outline for your next book, like by in 2 weeks. Like, can you send it to me? And Nora's like, all right, hold on. 2 weeks later sends her a full draft because she's like, how am I supposed to know what happens until I write the whole thing?
Oh my God.
So yeah, then we're not alone.
No. Also, Nora Roberts is so impressive how fast she can write stuff. And yet still fans complain to her that she's not writing fast enough.
You can't win.
Yeah. Oh. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Setting for a reader to sit and read your book, what would it be? Like location, music, drink, like what would the vibe be? If you could pick a perfect setting for a reader to read your book, location, drink, vibe, set the scene for us.
Well, this book, I would say on the beach somewhere, maybe with a margarita in your hand, listening to, I don't know, like Lana Del Rey, maybe. I, yeah, like a nice warm day on the beach on a towel. That sounds lovely, actually.
Yeah, pretty perfect.
Yeah, that's really nice considering it's been raining here for like
Yeah.
a week.
I'm going to say my own reading experience of reading this lying in bed while it rained was also great.
I mean, reading in the rain is also really nice. Or
Yeah.
reading while it's raining, not in the actual rain.
That's probably bad for the book. Yeah.
True.
Well, has writing more romance in this book made you want to lean more into romance? Like someday are we going to get the Liz Lawson just straight up romance?
So I am actually working on a draft which I have not sold or anything, but it's like on the back burner right now because of this book and my next contracted book. But I am working on, I would say it's like more maybe like women's straddling women's fiction and romance, about a girl or a woman who's forced to move back to her hometown after her dad dies and leaves her a minor league baseball team.
What?
And she ends up like, kind of liking one of the players and all of that. But it, yes. So yes, it does not
Good.
have any murder in it.
I know. I feel like we should have just recorded. Well, we don't have microphones on the audience. I feel like we should have just recorded that and you could like take it into a publisher and be like, here's my next book.
People want it.
They,
Any other questions?
I can keep pulling stuff out.
All right,
We
go
still have time. Okay, so we know that you don't outline like a maniac. No, but what do your writing routines look like? Like, what is a typical writing day for you?
I usually start writing when my kid goes to school, which is very early in the morning. They have to be there by 8.
What?
Yeah, it's so early. My alarm goes off before 7 a.m. It's tragic. So
No wonder you write about murder.
Right? I I start writing like once I've had my first coffee, and then I write for most of the day. I tend to stop around probably like 3:30 or 4, but yeah, I spend most of the day writing.
That is so impressive. I feel like I can only write for 3 hours at a time, unless I'm really in the zone.
I find when I'm drafting it much harder to continuously write. When I'm revising, I can get very much in the zone. I love revising. That is my favorite. Are you not a reviser?
No, I love revising too.
Oh yeah, it's the best.
The best.
It's the best. Drafting is like the most painful thing, probably because I don't outline. But I find drafting much more exhausting on my brain.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, so I do it for a few hours and then I spend the rest of the day being like, why aren't you drafting?
Yeah, I understand.
Just going online instead.
Yeah, I understand that very, very deeply.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any like superstitions around, right? Like, I need to light this candle or I need to do this or that?
Not really. I would say like the biggest thing I found, and I think this is just something I trained in myself, and it's probably very strange, is like if I'm somewhere now that I cannot stand and write, I have a lot of trouble. I really like standing up and writing. Yeah.
Do you have a standing desk?
I do have a standing desk, and I spend, I would say 80%. I have yes, I have a treadmill that I use too while I'm writing. I for whatever reason I found it really helpful to where I'm not just like sitting there kind of like sinking into my couch. So during the day I tend to like hop between standing and walking and sitting sometimes, but when I'm, for example, like up in New York at this book event and I was working on my revision, I was having a lot of trouble just sitting there writing because I felt like I started getting antsy. I was like, I need to move.
Yeah.
So
I feel that way in terms of like I need to go on a walk in the morning before writing a lot of the time to just, I don't know, like get the thoughts started or something.
Yeah. If I'm really stuck, I'll go walk outside for sure. Because that just like the break from your computer is important.
Maybe even leave your phone at home.
Oh God. I'm scary.
Oh, really? My husband like got me a flip phone for Christmas.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I still only use my iPhone most of the time, but when I go to a coffee shop or something, I will just bring my flip phone and like he has the number for it. So if there's an emergency with our daughter or something like that, or with him, he can get in touch with me.
Oh, that's great.
Otherwise,
I love that. I'm gonna have to think about
yeah
doing that as well.
Flip phone live.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, I wish I didn't, because nowadays there's like a whole thing about Chat GPT loving the M dash and people thinking that authors who use the M dash have used Chat GPT, etc., which is frustrating because the M dash has been around a lot longer than ChatGPT. I just love that. I don't know. I tend to overuse M dashes and also ellipses in my writing. My editor really, my adult editor does not like my ellipses use. She's like, okay, we've talked about this. Like, take these out. So I don't know. I think it's a nice form of punctuation that is a little bit stronger than a comma, but not a period.
Yeah.
Deep thoughts.
No, I've tried to like train myself out of using M dashes, but nothing hits the same way
No,
for
they're
me.
just so nice. Like it's like better than a parenthetical, but also, yeah, I don't know. They're
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, they really are. Probably have time for one or two more questions.
Anyone?
Anything you would like to tell readers to
What are you reading now?
Oh, okay. I just finished Kin.
Oh, I've heard that's very good.
It's wonderful.
Okay, I
Yeah,
have to. Yes, I've heard that very good things about that.
I know. Oprah was not wrong when she
Fair.
recommended it.
And I just finished reading Lena Dunham's memoir,
Oh, how was
which it
that?
was very good. I really enjoyed it. I'm a big fan of girls, so
Yeah.
it was like really fascinating to read about all the health issues she was going through while she was filming Girls, and like being able to like do that while you're like suffering is it was just like amazing to me.
Yeah. Well, and talk about like being in your 20s and trying to figure out who you are, but she was doing it like in a TV show with the eyes of the world on her, critiquing her
Absolutely.
every move.
Yeah, and talking about unlikable female protagonist,
Yeah.
right? It's like
Hannah Horvath.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Oh my God. But I feel like time has been very kind to girls, actually. Like people looking back on it now are like, this is a masterpiece.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. I love it.
Yeah. I just also finished Belle Burden's book, Strangers.
Yes.
Right? That's what it's called. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Speaking of like the hot memoirs.
Oh yeah, all the memoirs are coming out.
Yeah, they're good. Well, if that's it, I think we can wrap up. And thank you so much for coming. And thank you for writing such a fun, wonderful book.
Well, thank you for for being my conversation partner.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. I feel like we've hung out not enough. And so this was just an excuse to hang out with you, but also have a lot of other people here.
Big round of applause. Big round of applause. Thank you both so much. We are going to take just a moment to reset the space for the signing, but also for cake. So we are going to bring out some cake. If you haven't purchased your copy of either of their books, we have those available upstairs, and our book sales are what make our events possible and how we can go to the publisher and say, yes, please, see, we love Liz, bring her back. So book sales happen upstairs. Cake will be set up over in our young adult area, and our signing table will be here. But give us just a moment to reset everything. If you are willing and able to set your chairs to the side, a staff member will come by and collect them. And thank you all for being here. One more big round of applause.